We've gone through 6 guiding principles, and when we bring them all in together, it brings us to this last guiding principle, which is optimize and automate. I got it right, Chris.
That's great. I got to tell you something. If only we could have just automated us being able to say all that sometimes, right?
Yeah, I mean, avatars maybe.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Of course, I would definitely make mine a lot better looking, as in my case. Scott doesn't have to worry about that. So
I think you're fine too.
Yeah, all right, well, thank you. So optimize and automate, what are we talking about here? Well, let's just put it this way. In the world of ITIL, as we like to say, on ITIL Island, where everyone just thinks about all things ITIL, you wear ITIL shirts, wear ITIL hats, automation, effective and efficient automation is awesome. They love it. In fact, they have been promoting automation for years and years. Even back in the 90s when they were producing the books, they were talking about better ways to automate, whether it was processes or procedures or practices or just how things were handled. They were a big proponent of this. And part of the reason why is, let's just be honest, resources of all type, especially human resources, should be used most effectively, as much as possible. Well, the problem is sometimes we have human beings that are being used to do things that really is not the sum total of the human condition. Things like adding things, subtracting things, or counting things. I remember, you and I, grew up in about the same, time period, and I remember my grandparents loved watching the old I Love Lucy reruns, right? Yeah. And remember the infamous I Love Lucy episode where she and Ethel are on that assembly line, and it's just like, after a while, what happened? Mistakes start happening. Why? Because, they're not a machine, and we're not machines. Whereas machines, they love counting things. They love, identifying things. And they love doing calculations. And guess what? They do them way more faster than we can. And so this is kind of what you were kind of talking about in a previous episode where you said, hey, you know what? There are certain things that AI do really well.
Yeah. So, we all know that computers are really good at math. And it's really good at other things. And yet, sometimes when we build processes, we want to build those processes to where the humans are doing things that they're not as good at, whereas we're trying to give technology things that it's not good at, and we want to make sure that work is aligned, right?
Yeah.
Like we want to make sure that we're matching the work to the best resource. And the way we're going to do that is by optimizing the work.
Yeah, and so if you notice something here, part of what we do is we take a look at the slide here again, is that when you use a lot of what Scott said about how all these things that we've been talking about before in the guiding principles, focus on value and progress iteratively and yada, 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 we notice that you eventually want to eliminate those things that are truly wasteful and then use technology to achieve what it is best at. And that way human intervention can happen when it needs to happen. And so something that I've always, just kept as a kind of a little mantra that I always used to say, machines do what machines do, humans should do what humans do.
Absolutely.
And if you think about that and consider that, again, a lot of people say, well, yeah, but Chris, some of these things that machines couldn't do with more artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic process, automation, certain things are happening where, yeah, machines can do that. Great. But make sure that, again, that it's because a machine can do it either better, more efficiently, or with less error than a human can. Because then what happens is you free up that human engagement and interaction. There's a great video, by the way, it's one of the downloads that you can have called Creator Burger. And so I highly suggest that you take a look at it. And Alex there, the owner of this Creator Burger that was in San Francisco, he created a robot that creates hamburgers. And one of the comments that he had, and so I give credit to him, I love this quote, we should be learning how to shepherd technology in a way that helps us to where humans do what is the culmination of the human spirit. And I love that quote because he's saying, look, let's use technology for what technology is for. So all that to say, for the exam, with optimize and automate, one of the things you know is like, hey, yes, automation is great, but it should only be used when human intervention is not actually the best thing. In other words, if humans can do it better, you don't automate it. Let human beings do that. Let machines or an automated system, and by the way, that can also be an automation can be a human being engaging with something that's mechanical to then do something in an automated type of way.
Absolutely.
So that's also important to kind of think of.
Think of like the grocery store, the scanner, right?
Yeah.
Like we have the human moving the grocery item over the optical scanner, and that's automating instead of having to have them punch it. So that's a perfect example of the human technology integration.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do need to know, and we'll remind you this in just a second, is that you always optimize, though, before you automate. You don't want to automate something that is still kind of out there and, it's not simple yet. We haven't keeping it simple and practical. We haven't eliminated things that are unnecessary. We haven't made things more concise when it needs to be more concise. So you want to optimize before you automate. Now, what you're going to see here is what they call the path, or the 6 steps on the path to optimization. And what's really cool about this is that it's very similar to what we're going to see when we take a look at continual improvement and the continual improvement model, or the CI model. In fact, some of the terminology, Scott, is going to be very similar to what you see here. So the first thing that you're going to do when you do the road or path to optimization, and by the way, from an exam perspective, you don't have to know all 6 steps. You don't have to memorize this. But what I have found in any certification exam is if there are some like a 6 steps or 7 steps, it's always good to pretty much know what? The first thing and the last thing, right? If you know those, you're going to be good. Especially here. What's the very first thing that you would need to understand is that we need to understand and agree on the context in which this optimization is going to take place, which means we need to understand the vision and the mission and the objectives of the organization. Why? And we haven't really talked too much about this, Scott, but essentially part of the reason why ITIL works so well as an IT service management framework is because that they really promote the integration of business and IT. It used to be that the IT department was kind of its own animal, right? It would be out there, and the IT department would be going down its own path and going, "Ooh, cool, new technology. Oh, cool, we're doing this." Meanwhile, the business is like, "Well, we're trying to do this," and so they're kind of doing this, right? And, if you've ever gone sailing and you've ever been where one foot's on the dock and another is on the boat and it's not tied on, that's what happens to the companies too. Somebody's going to get wet. You're going to drop into the water, right? And that's the thing is like you look at this and you say, look, if the IT department is going in this direction and optimizing and automating and doing technology, but the business is trying to go in a different direction with a different mission or objectives, it's not going to work. And so that's why it's very important. And we'll see this in the CI model as well. So just so you understand that. Okay, so that's the first step. Understanding, hey, where are we trying to go? So that way I'm not optimizing something that doesn't help the organization or doesn't fulfill their objectives. Secondly, you want to assess the current state. We've already talked about that. Start where you are, right? So that's why we say a lot of these guiding principles are coming into this optimize and automate. So you start where you are. You get a current baseline. Where are we currently at? What are we currently doing? You need to know that before you optimize, because if you don't know where you start from, it's kind of hard to know if you actually made it, right? So that's important. The third step is agreeing on what that future state is. What are the priorities of the organization? Where is we trying to go? And this is where you use things like SMART targets, right? Specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, relevant and timely, right? SMART. That's a great tool to use, and talk about universal. People use that all over, and it works really, really well. That way you're not just in general, well, in general, we're going to do this. We're going to make things better. Okay, what does that mean? That's not very specific, is it? So these are things that you need to think about, setting those targets. The next thing you're going to do is ensure that you have the appropriate level of stakeholder engagement and commitment. And by the way, this is not just, oh, we need to make sure that the boss is going to write the checks and approve it. It's, do you have your teams on board? Are they going to hop on and say, yeah, we're on board with this? Well, again, if they understand the vision, if they know where they are, where the target is, in other words, they know where they're going to go, it's a lot easier to get people to have buy-in and to understand or feel like they're doing what they need to do and be a part of that team. Then we're going to execute on those improvement initiatives in an iterative way, right? Again, here, hey, look, we're bringing in progress iteratively with feedback here, right? And so we're bringing that in and we're saying, look, we need to stay together, get that feedback so that way we know that we're on target, we know that we're actually making progress, right? Comprehend the whole, but do something, we're making it. We're not just staying at the static quo, we're actually doing something with that. And then obviously the last one is once you've come and you said, all right, it is now optimized, what are we going to do? How well did that work? And by the way, that's great for now, but I have a feeling come maybe next year or maybe in a couple of years, we're going to have to optimize it again. Just depends, again, on what it is that you are optimizing. If it's something that's very big and grand in scale, you're probably going to only do that every year or two. Whereas if it's something that's real simple and small and daily operational, hey, that could be something that happens every quarter or every couple months. So, you can decide on that going forward. So how do we apply this? Well, so glad you asked. First off, you all need to simplify and or optimize before you automate. Do not try to automate something that's complex. You might, of course, the abilities of automation these days can handle complexity, but that's not where you want to start. Again, right? Keep it simple and practical. Start where you are. These principles that we're bringing in to help us remind us how to do this. Then define your metrics. Decide, hey, how are we going to measure it? How are we going to measure success? How are we going to measure to make sure that the optimization and automation are actually bringing what? Value to the organization. And then finally, when you do this, this is just basically repeating ourselves, right? Use the other guiding principles when applying this one. Focus on value. Start where you are. Progress iteratively with feedback. Collaborate and promote visibility. You saw every single one of those guiding principles in that path, the road to optimization, and even in the automation itself, which is why we would say is, guess what? These guiding principles, they interact. They work together. And that means that you can't just, and this is important, gang, listen to me very carefully, you do not just pick your favorite ones, and those are the ones you use. I'm a focus on value, start where you are guy, but all the rest I don't really worry about. No, ITIL says all 7. In fact, they say whereas some might have more influence at certain aspects, you need to consider all 7. Ding, 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 Willett Room. Consider all 7, but understand that some of these obviously are going to have more influence or more effect in certain areas in your organization. We get that, but don't just go, well, I like, 3 or 4 of these, or I'm going to pick just one and try to apply it here. Apply all 7, Scott, and then you're doing really well.
There you go. Apply all of the guiding principles, bring them all in together, understand that they all work together. That's kind of one of the guiding principles there, work holistically. And Chris, where are we going next?
Well, you know what? I think we're going to start talking about things like the 4 dimensions, maybe the service value system. We got a lot of really good stuff coming up.
All right, so we'll see you in the next video.